but I'm going to introduce our next revolutionary, Aaron Hurst. Now, I feel like most of you probably know Taproot, right? Many of you might have taken advantage of Taproot, we hope, and those great service grants. Now, Aaron, as you would expect, has opinions about the way we can do our work better, and he's going to share with us some of those ideas. So with that, we're going to not only meet a man who's passionate about service, but he's also passionate about getting business and nonprofits to work better together. And at this point, as Reverend Murray reminded us, it's time to get busy. So Aaron, it's my pleasure to introduce Aaron Hurst.
How much time do we have now? All right. Is this thing working? It's so great to be here. I live in Brooklyn, New York, but LA is one of my absolute favorite places. And it's great to come back. I remember a couple years ago when we launched our program in LA, how much pride I had in being able to come to the city, because there's so much need. And the business community here really does need to step up and make a difference, because as Reverend Murray talked, it struck me that I was born in 1974. That speech could have been given in 1974. We've come a long way, but we haven't come very far. So many of the problems the Reverend talked about remain our challenges today. We've made progress in a few things, but we need to do a better job. And that's really what I've committed my career to. And I'm reminded, any of you study philosophy in college? So you'll probably remember, I think it was Socrates who said, "Don't hate the player, hate the game." Is that Socrates?
Yes.
It was Socrates. And I think what the challenge is that we as a nonprofit sector have been doing a lot to try to address the issues of the player. We haven't been doing enough to address the issues of the game. And I think it's time for us to try to really fundamentally focus our efforts on changing the game and not being distracted by the player. So I want to talk to you about how, in our modest way, I've tried to focus not on the player, but changing the game. And hope that there's a couple lessons for all of you in the successes and failures of the Taproot Foundation over the last 12 years, as we've gone from my desk in my bedroom to having affiliates around the world. And we've gone from the point where nonprofits said, "No, thank you, I'm not interested in getting help from business. I'm not interested in pro bono service. You get what you pay for. It's the gift that keeps on taking." To the point that today, the Taproot Foundation has generated over $120 million in pro bono services for nonprofits, to the point where we are at close to $20 billion, with a B, dollars in pro bono services that are generated every year for nonprofits across this country. $20 billion. We've fundamentally changed the capacity building field to the point where nonprofits have access to a much wider set of resources than they could ever have. It's a fundamental shift in how resources are generated in the nonprofit sector. It's a fundamental shift in the role of professionals in society, where it goes from a professional saying, "My job is to help grow the bottom line of companies," to saying, "I have talents that are fundamentally important in a modern society, and they can't just be accessible to those who can afford them. They must be accessible to those who can use those resources to fundamentally make an impact in our society." Those are the ways we're trying to change the game. So I'm going to walk you through 11 ways that I've found you need to run an organization to change the game. And I'm assuming this is my lightsaber. Let's see if it works. Number one, tension is critical to success. I have far more enemies than I have friends. They are both within the organization, they are around the country, and they're around the world. Because when I started Taproot, I said things that people didn't like, which is the fact, first of all, that people should be willing to work for free if it's about making an impact. There are a lot of people who didn't like that. There are a lot of people who said volunteerism is about engaging citizens in service. And I said, no. It's about fundamentally making an impact. It's not enough to serve. It's not service unless someone is served. And we need to change and flip the fundamental volunteerism question around and say, what does the community need, not what is entertaining for volunteers. Sounds pretty obvious, but people did not like that. Companies did not like that. Volunteer organizations did not like that. They wanted to believe it was about the volunteer, and it is not about the volunteer. It is about the community, and it's about the community that's in need, and we fundamentally need to embrace that. Number 2, hire ambitious talent and let them grow. There are so many amazing, talented, highly capable people in Los Angeles and every city around the world. They want to work in the nonprofit sector, but a lot of them, and many of my friends, start in the nonprofit sector and they move after a year because we don't fundamentally challenge them to bring out their very best. We don't fundamentally give them the room to stretch and grow. We don't need to give people job descriptions. We need to give people goals. We need to give them purpose. We need to give them a sense of what is it that you're going to accomplish in your career and how you're going to do that at this organization. The nonprofit sector does not have jobs. It has opportunities for purpose. It has opportunities to change society. It has opportunities to change the game. And we need to fundamentally bring talent into our organizations and challenge them to do that in what they do. The third one is we make the sector way more complicated because the reality is the work we do is incredibly complicated. The problem is you can't get people to support complicated work. You can't get funding for complicated work. We need to make our work simple. We need to simplify what we do. We need to create very simple hooks that enable people to get into the work we do. The Taproot Foundation has had close to 200 foundations support our work. 200. I haven't been able to find a single nonprofit in the US, besides maybe USC, that has more foundations funding our work than the Taproot Foundation. And the reason we did that is we went super simple. And we said, Foundation X, if you give us $1, we will create $8 in pro bono services for nonprofits you care about. Period. End of story. We can take your $1 and turn it into 8. And that's why hundreds of foundations, companies have signed up to support the Taproot Foundation and enabled us to make the impact. We could have talked about all the outcomes. We could have talked about all the theory. We could have talked about how the pro bono consultants' lives were being affected by this. But that's not what sold them. What sold them was a simple hook. We can turn $1 into 8. Every foundation, despite how much money they have, feels poor. Every single program officer hates saying no. If you can multiply their dollars, that's a gift to them. You've got to find that simple hook, or else you're not going to be able to fundamentally ramp up, make an impact. 3, design matters. It matters how you show up. My grandfather ran the Aspen Institute for about 25 years and was good friends with the Rockefellers, with Henry Kissinger as a close family friend. And he always dressed in the best suits, stayed in the best hotels, always focused on design. And as a kid, I asked him, like, you work at a nonprofit, what the hell are you doing? Right? And he said, if you want to play at the table, you got to act like you belong at the table. And I don't remember whose quote it was, but someone said, if you're not at the table, you're what's for lunch. You've got to dress like you belong at that table, or else you're not going to have a chance to change the game. And that leads me to number 5. Too many nonprofits are cheap. We are not going to be successful as a sector if we're cheap. We need to be resourceful. And there's a big difference between cheap and resourceful. Cheap is saying, we're a nonprofit, we can't afford to have an office space that is beautifully designed, easy to work in, has the best furniture, has the best materials, because we're just a poor nonprofit. That's being cheap. Being resourceful is when Taproot calls on architects, calls on top companies and says, we have a new office, make it your showroom to show the best of what's possible in an office space. And they say yes and send hundreds of thousands of dollars in furniture. They send their best architects and designers to help us figure out how to optimize that space. And they were thrilled to do it and said, nonprofits never ask us. We have all this extra furniture. We have all these extra materials. No one ever asked for it. You're not asking for it. You've got to be resourceful, not cheap. Another example. So many nonprofit professionals say they don't get the professional development they need. Every company does tons of trainings for their employees. To add an extra seat or two to them doesn't cost them a penny. No nonprofits are asking them if they can have a seat at those trainings. Nonprofit boards aren't bringing on HR leaders onto their boards who can actually create inventory for their employees to go and get executive coaching for free, get training for free. These things are all available. They're getting spoiled. They're like lettuce that's been sitting on the shelf because no one's using them. You guys have to ask for them. You have to be resourceful. The answer is not we can't do this. It's how do we do it. Which brings me to ask for help. The number one most important skill in a nonprofit executive director is the ability to ask for help. Because no one can do this alone. It takes an army to create change and to change the game. When Taproot realized we could never scale to make the difference we wanted to make, we didn't give up. We didn't say, okay, well, it was a nice try. We were a nice nonprofit. We did some good. We helped do $100 million in pro bono. That's not good enough. So we went to LinkedIn and said, you guys have the largest online network of business professionals in the world. We want every single one of them doing pro bono work. They said, let's do it. And we're now building a partnership to enable every nonprofit to access incredible talent through LinkedIn so you can do pro bono work without Taproot. We want to put ourselves out of business. We want to find ways to ask for help to do things on a radically different scale. And at a much more mundane level, when I started Taproot out of my bedroom, I started it by posting an ad on Craigslist, just asking people, is there anyone out there who'd like to help start an organization? I got inundated with requests from incredibly talented people who, some of them quit their jobs to help. Some of them work 20 hours a week to help. People want to help. There are millions of people out there that want to help. You have that need. Don't let them sit there unused. Be a shark. Does anybody know that line? It's from a Woody Allen movie. It said a relationship is like a shark. As soon as it stops moving forward, it dies. And I think the same thing is true of organizations. No matter how bad things get, you cannot stop moving forward. When the recession hits, it's not time to stop, it's time to go faster. When you've got turnover or a problem, it's not time to lick your wounds, it's time to go faster, to go harder, to move forward. The second you stop moving forward, you're dead. And I think too often we let the challenges that face us, which are very real challenges, get in the way of us moving forward, and we become nice organizations. We become organizations that are fundamentally dead. We're not changing the game. We've got to constantly move forward. This is my second favorite word after yes. As an entrepreneur, I'm told no so many times. So many times. And to me, I get so fired up. It's like striking out in baseball. You're pissed off that you struck out, but the next time you come up to bat, you're all the more excited to get up there and take a hit. When I hear a no, it's an opportunity to learn. Why didn't that person say yes? How can I change what I'm doing to get to that yes? Another person that I can help convert to being able to be an agent for change. And people who are demotivated by no can't change the game because they're basically letting the people who are setting the game continue to set the rules. If you don't accept no and you see it instead as an opportunity to do better, you're on the right path. Don't confuse, this is number 9, don't confuse organizational survival with success. Your job as nonprofit leaders is not to sustain nonprofit organizations. That is not your mission. It is not your vision. It may be that the best way to achieve your mission and vision is for you to go out of business. So many times I talk to nonprofit leaders, and their missions have become to sustain and enable their organization to survive. That is a horrible vision for an organization. Money is not fundamentally our vision. Sustaining our organizations is not our mission. We need to fundamentally think about what is going to be best for our mission and vision. So even when Taproot was facing challenges, with the recession, et cetera, I was off in Germany figuring out how to bring pro bono to Europe. We were at a moment of sort of threatening our very own survival, but I knew that it was more important to enable others to do this work and to spread the opportunity for pro bono and the gospel of pro bono to other folks because I didn't know if Taproot was going to survive or not. What I knew was that pro bono had to survive, that we had to make sure that the marketplace for pro bono survived, and that I would not let that fact that the economy was in bad shape or that we were in trouble jeopardize our mission or our vision, which are much more important than the organization. Don't give budgets too much power. This goes to a similar point. We sometimes think that our budget is our mission, or our budget is our strategic plan. I see this happen all the time. Budgets are tools, they are not our boss. They are not our mandate. Budgets are simply a mechanism to help you organize your finances and to set some goals. The best decisions I've made, without exception, at Taproot have been off budget. They were made because an opportunity arose and the ROI was clear. And the board would often say, it's not in the budget. The staff would say, it's not in the budget. But it's in mission, and the mission's way more important than the budget. The question is ROI. When you make a decision, is the return on that investment worth it? Several times I came across incredible talent that were just what we needed, did not have an open rec for it, didn't have a job description for it. But I met them and I knew immediately that they were the thing that was going to move us forward. Budget said, don't hire them. You've got to hire them. You've got to find a way to make it work because you know they will not only produce enough revenue to move you forward, but they'll be the difference maker that helps you get to that next level. This is not to say like intentionally go bankrupt. That is not what I'm recommending. Budgets matter, but you've got to put them in your place. They work for you, you don't work for them. Number 11, fail fast and often. You're not going to go to jail for failing. At Taproot, we fail way more often than we succeed. The difference is we know when we fail quickly and we change course. And we're not scared to fail. Our service grant model, which has won awards around the world, which has produced over $100 million in pro bono, the original design of that had way more mistakes in it than things that we got right. The difference was we learned what they were and we changed them. You've got to constantly be willing to fail, but just make sure you're learning. That's the difference. So, as some of you may know, this is sort of a chronology of me from when I started Taproot through to today, including my brief stint as a Muppet, which was really the highlight of my career. As many of you know, I'm leaving as CEO of Taproot at the end of June to start a new venture in July that's just begun. And all of you have in your bags Exhibit A, this postcard here. Everybody pull it out, look for it. I want to make sure you have one, because if you don't, I got to get you one. This actually just went up today. You guys are the first ones to hear about this, and I hope to someday make you proud to say that you were here today for this. My uncle, in 1977, was an economics PhD student at Stanford University, 1977. And he wrote his dissertation. It was 9 volumes, ridiculous, coining the term information economy and proving that the information economy had become 50% of the gross domestic product of the United States. We had fundamentally shifted from agrarian to industrial to now an information economy. What I've seen in my work at Taproot and working around the world is that the United States is on the brink in the next 10 years of another fundamental change. We are going to go, again, from agrarian to industrial to information to a purpose economy. Purpose, the creation of purpose for individuals, is going to come to dominate the US economy, where it doesn't go from something that's nice that happens on the side. It is something that fundamentally is going to drive the majority of the gross domestic product of economic output in this country. I'm completely convinced of this. I've done interviews with economists, politicians, business, nonprofit. We are fundamentally changing the US economy, and the nonprofit sector is at the core of the new economy. The nonprofit sector is no longer that nice charitable thing that happens on the side. The nonprofit sector is about to become the epicenter of the United States economy. We're going to see that in the next 10 years. It's going to fundamentally shift your role as leaders. You're going to be looked at to help not just take care of those who are in need, but to help define fundamentally what this nation is, what this economy is about. So I hope that all of you will take a minute, order the book, not because I'm making much money on it. I think I'll make like 10 cents per book, so it's not for that reason. But I want to make sure you guys all understand the important role that you're going to play in the history of this country. You need to understand that so we can help ensure that everyone gets behind the nonprofit sector, that gets behind purpose, that gets behind fundamentally the changes that are needed to change the game. Because that ultimately is the biggest game changer. When we go from the nonprofit sector to the heart of the new economy. And I need your help to make sure that that change to the most important game happens. So thank you, and I want to thank the little bird, is that what your new nickname is? Regina. I travel around the U.S., the various offices, and I want you guys to know, because I know a lot of you are very focused on LA, that you really have a treasure in the Center for Nonprofit Management. I think it's easy to take it for granted because you all are here, and it's been a pillar of this community for a while. But I can think of no organizations that are truly peers, whether it's in New York, San Francisco, Chicago, anywhere, to the kind of innovative approach that Regina and her team lead. And I just want you guys to make sure you guys are aware of what a treasure that is. So thank you all, and good luck changing the game.
Well, do we have any questions for Aaron before we let him go? Because he's jetting back to New York, and I don't want to miss this opportunity to pick his brain.
I think the better question is, why isn't there a 5 on the back of your suit? So it turns out that the key to unlocking social innovation and social impact is the number 5. It is the core behind the Taproot's model, but it's also in the research I've done. There's only 5 ways you can create social change. So I'm a big believer in the number 5, and I think men's suits are boring. Those are the two main reasons. Damn it. See if I can remember them. So, number 1, disruptive technology. So when you fundamentally change the technology, which could be anything from a new medicine to new information technology that fundamentally changes what is possible. Yep. Number 2 is policy. Changing public policy, corporate policy. It's changing the fundamental framework and rules for the game within an issue. Number 3 is changing public perception or behavior, where you're fundamentally changing the way consumers and citizens make decisions and decide about their choices. Number 4 is bright spots. When we prove that something's possible that people didn't think was possible, so that we can then replicate that. So like with Taproot, people didn't believe pro bono was possible to be effective. Proving that it was then changed the whole field because it enabled others to get behind it. And the final one is new data or insights that fundamentally changes our definition of the finish line. It changes our understanding of what success is because we have new data or insights that change our fundamental understanding. Those are the only 5 ways you can actually change the game in an issue. And it usually takes many of them to do it. And it takes the right leadership. It takes the right resources. But that's really your playbook for changing the game. It's those 5 things. Yep.
What are some of the nonprofits that I want to say the word ideal, but no one has ever 100%. So are there any nonprofits that you should say, this one did this and it changed that?
Yep. It's really a nonprofit. It's a leader and a coalition of organizations across business, nonprofit, government. It's very rare, I think, major change happens because of an organization. It happens because of a group of people who have a shared belief and set of values working across sectors. My wife runs one of these organizations right now. She's the CEO of the Sustainability Consortium. It's a group of leading companies, leading NGOs, government agencies. And what they realized was, it actually came out of Walmart, because Walmart was trying to get their supply chain, so the companies that provide the products into Walmart, to become sustainable, right? Which is great, right? Walmart wanted to do this. They would go to a t-shirt manufacturer and say, please, we want sustainable t-shirts. And the t-shirt vendor said, yes, sir, what does that mean? And they're like, we don't know. It turns out a t-shirt alone has 30 components in it. So if you want to know whether or not it's sustainable, you actually have to do research and understand all 30 components of that t-shirt to be able to determine that sustainability. And the problem is no one wants to pay for that. It costs about $1 million per product to be able to create the science and technology to determine sustainability. So they got together all these companies, all these NGOs, government agencies, and said, let's pool the money, to actually understand the data and insights behind each of these products so that we can change corporate policy around our buying behavior so that now Walmart buyers, the ones deciding what goes on the shelves, their bonuses are tied to how sustainable the products are that they're putting on the shelves because they now have the data to make that difference. And they're doing it with these nonprofits who are making sure that it's credible, that they're answering the right questions and doing it in a way which has integrity. So it's the ability for them to all come together that to me fundamentally changes it. So I don't look to any one organization. It's about the ability for people to come together around an issue and change the game. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. The best thing I've seen, so her question is around how do you institutionalize learning into an organization, right? One of the things I've found is to really help people define their assumptions. In the Service Grant program, we had 3 pages of assumptions that we had made in the design of it. And by naming those, it was no longer personal. There were no sacred cows. It's just we made these assumptions. And therefore, as we were going about actually implementing the program, we could go back and say, is that assumption proving right or wrong? Right? I think the second one is to use scientific method, which is tied to that, right? Do you remember from high school, you had to do, like in chemistry class, so state your assumptions or hypothesis around each thing, is to really be clear about what it is you're intending to do from the get-go, and up front, not focus on delivery as the goal, but more in figuring out whether or not your hypothesis was correct, right? And building a culture around scientific method, which can apply to anything from social work to education, but it's taking that mindset and thinking about it in terms of constantly testing to see if you're figuring out new things or whether or not you're wrong. I think those are really critical. And I think the other thing is just in every meeting that you have, asking as part of the agenda, like, have anybody learned anything new? Or has anybody seen anything that makes us question some of the ways that we are assuming we should be doing our business, our organization? And building that into your agenda. The same way when your kids come home from school, you ask, what did they learn today? Build that into the fundamental agenda of your meetings. Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. That's great. Yeah. So the book is the launching pad for what I'm doing next. The goal is to create an organization that can provide the insights and tools for the new purpose economy. We're developing a new Myers-Briggs for purpose that's going to help every professional be able to determine directionally what their purpose in their career is so that we can have a lot less purpose evaporation, which is people with good intentions where that's not channeled to any good. So we can really help understand as individuals where we can have purpose, which is a very individualized thing, and help fundamentally shift the way organizations manage people, the way we market to people based on purpose as a core driver. And then helping to really create markets within the purpose economy where we're helping to bring together those nonprofits, the companies, government, to really move these issues forward instead of focusing on the players, trying to really focus on that game. So early days, I can tell you for sure it will not be what I think it is today a year from now, but that's directionally where I'm going and really excited about it. And I'm seeing I'm out of time. Maybe one last question, because I can't see Regina, so she can't really stop me. Yes? Yes? That wasn't a question, so I get one more.
My organization has very fortunate enough to benefit from the Taproot Foundation as we work with the Taproot. We're very thankful for their pro bono help. It's really helping us to access how sustainable the work that they're doing is so that we can make money. And so I want to say thank you on behalf of
That's wonderful. We love you. Thank you, and it's such a joy to be able to help. I mean, you guys are really doing the hard work, and this is one of the things I couldn't stand about volunteerism field was the sense that they were the heroes, these volunteers going out, and I failed to recognize, I think, that you guys are really the ones that are day in and day out doing all that hard work and, you know, creating opportunities for people to make an impact. So thank you for all that you guys do collectively.
All right, thank you, Aaron.